Hello everyone, welcome to another video talking geeky stuff with me. Today's video is another actor focus. And yeah, it's been a long time since I did one of these actor focus videos. Last one was with Andy Lau, Lau Dok-hwa. And speaking about him and Tony Leung, and the funny thing is they started out kind of very similar, very side by side to be honest. And they both were in TVB back in the early 80s. They were part of a group of actors that TVB formed, almost like a boy band, and they were called the Tigers, or the Five Tigers. They were based off the Five Tiger Generals of the Three Kingdoms, Romance of the Three Kingdom, or Dynasty Warriors, if you're familiar with that story. So what TVB used to do back then was either a female group or a male group who had potential, and they'll form them up and they'll train them. And this is talking about in the early 80s, where Hong Kong and Chinese films were still coming off the back of like Peking opera training. So they had to be versatile, like singing, dancing, learning martial arts, acting itself, even learning to do their own stunts. So practically they can do everything. I mean, you watch one of Andy Lau's interviews, he's telling us how he did all the stunts because the movie industry at that time saying that it cost more money to bring a stunt team in, just do a stunt, or it's cheaper for the actor to do their own stunts. So lucky for them, they had the training back in the 80s about that. And they all become famous in TVB, and they all end up starring in multiple roles. They practically dominated the 80s TV, especially in TVB itself, TVB being the biggest TV company in Hong Kong. And then they all branched out into movies. The two famous ones was Tony Leung and Andy Lau. Tony Leung stayed in TV industry maybe about 2 years longer than Andy Lau. I think Tony Leung left around 89. And yeah, kind of moved on. Out of the two actors, like I said, the contrast is so similar. I think Andy Lau become more famous because he became more of an idol, Cantonese pop idol. He pursued a singing career, he became one of the four heavenly kings in Hong Kong, Si Dai Ting Wong. But his acting career was too big. Where Tony Leung focused on someone singing, but never really hit it big as Andy Lau. But he became a bigger actor, I would say, overall, than Andy Lau. Bigger, I don't mean by making bigger box office and so on. Andy Lau kind of become the actor. Because in my opinion, in my generation in Hong Kong and China, and even in Asian cinema, he's one of the best, if not the best actor of my generation. Anyway, because that guy when he just plays that role, he really is that role. That's why in Hong Kong, he's like the record holder for the best actor awards. Well, Andy Lau won a few of them, but the problem with Andy Lau is he always seems to be Andy Lau. With Tony Leung, he can just kind of disappears and becomes that role he plays. And starting with his career, you can see that as an actor, he kind of played those roles of that time. What I mean by that is Hong Kong cinema back in the 80s to maybe the end of the 90s, 97, 98, they had this kind of, they didn't really focus on film production as much as, say, the West. Be it is true because there wasn't enough time, money, and Hong Kong is only the size of New York, or even smaller than New York, so you couldn't have the space to film, for example. And they didn't have a budget, and Hong Kong cinema wasn't as big as it is today, especially now with a lot of the mainland Chinese companies, multi-billion-dollar companies coming and pumping money into it. So as an actor, like back then, a potential actor who had big hits all the time, he was making easily 10 to 15 movies a year, and these films would probably get wrapped up in like no more than 2 months, 3 months maximum, and they would be like doing 3 movies at a time. They would do like their slot here, fly over or drive over to this area, do a slot here, come over here to do another movie, and you never really saw any actors' potential, to be honest with you. But for the time they got, you can clearly see the acting potential. And one of the best times that I really felt that he showed his acting was in Bullet in the Head, directed by John Woo, starring alongside with Jackie Chan He's also another great singer, one of the probably the best singers of my generation. And this film, reason why I felt was so good, because he had time to breathe, to travel to Vietnam. There's a big production value for that time. John Woo, he always takes time and effort to make his films. That's when I really saw Tony Leung. I was like, wow, this guy is actually really good. I mean, I've always known him in the TV, but in the TV shows, he's always had this kind of really plucky, fun, optimistic, young kind of actor, funny roles. But in this one, it was more like doom and gloom, and sometimes funny, optimistic, and it's also the first time I see him with, like, in this action film, a violent action film. So that's when I really took notice. I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And if you already know Tony Leung, you probably know that he works alongside with Wong Kar-wai, another amazing director, probably one of the best art house directors of my generation in Hong Kong. And I think his first film was Days of Being Wild. You look at the cast now. The cast is some of the biggest names in Hong Kong. I was going to say Hollywood there. Hong Kong cinema. I mean, apart from Leslie Cheung, Tony Leung, Andy Lau, Jackie Chan were known, but they were never as famous or popular as they are today. So you look at the film with current eyes, you think, wow, that is a stellar cast, which it is. But apart from maybe Leslie Cheung being probably the most popular character or actor or entertainer at that time, the other actors were just kind of up and coming in the movie industry itself. They were household names, but there wasn't iconic names yet. And as for Leslie Cheung, I'll do a video about him, maybe do a video about him later on. Amazing actor, amazing singer. Shame he died over a decade ago. Definitely maybe do a movie tribute about him as well. And also I mentioned so many times, he's a versatile actor from comedy to action to drama. He starred alongside his Tiger family, Andy Lau, a lot. So definitely check those films out, like Don't Fool Me, him and Andy Lau, good funny film. Another one you see is Comedy Genius, is watch a film called Days of Being Dumb with Jackie Chan. That is another good film. It's you watch it. They're trying to pretend to be triads and gangsters, and yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And if you want to even know who the Tigers were, they actually did a movie called The Tigers, 92, 93. He's in that. You can actually see who they are. And then I mentioned he worked with John Woo a lot, but the film that really, I think, really shined was Hardboiled, where he starred alongside Chow Fat, both amazing actors. But as much as I love Chow Fat, I did a video of him as well. Actually, Tony Leung, in my opinion, stole the show. Spoilers, he played undercover, and the action scenes were amazing. Still to this day is one of the best action films you can watch for a long time, probably ever. Filmed back in 1992, and Tony Leung, in my opinion, stole the show. And I mentioned earlier on how Hong Kong cinema matured as when it came to like the late 90s to now. As the film matured, I think it gave rise to the quality of Tony Leung's acting, where directors, producers, executives would start to realize, wait a minute, we need to take a bit more time, put more emphasis on production value, and make a better script, because Hong Kong was notorious, and still is sometimes, where they have like a half script and they will write the script while they continue filming. That's why sometimes these films are very disjointed. A lot of films back in the 90s where it starts off, the first two acts are pretty good, and then this third act is practically non-existent because they never wrote the script. They're writing while they're filming. So I'm glad that the Hong Kong cinema matured, and because of the maturity, it gave actors a lot more room to really act. And here you can see the last two movies, Eagle Shooting Heroes and Ashes of Time. So Ashes of Time was directed by Wong Kar-wai again. It's based on the Legend of the Condor Heroes, a novel, also being remade in movies and TV and even animation. Ashes of Time is more of a Leslie Cheung movie, but Tony Leung plays a character. Where Eagle Shooting Heroes is kind of like the parody, the opposite. They all starred it's still based on the Condor Heroes, and they all played the similar characters. I think the same characters with the same actors. Definitely watch it, and watch Ashes of Time first, and watch Eagle Shooting Stars. You can see the contrast, the comedy, and the really serious, heavy drama of Ashes of Time. And then, of course, moving on is, as I mentioned, how Hong Kong cinema matured, and also has Tony Leung become Wong Kar-wai's favorite actor. And because they had more time, more production value, which gave him time to write scripts. He worked alongside with Wong Kar-wai a lot and really focused on his acting and so on. But before I focus on all his films on Wong Kar-wai, I want to do a special mention for films like Infernal Affairs, again starring alongside Andy Lau. That film is one of my favorite police dramas of all time, not just in Asia but in general as a film. There was a trilogy. The other two wasn't bad. Check them out. It kind of rounds up the story. But you've just watched the film, the first one. It has its own beginning and end. It was so good that even Martin Scorsese took the story and kind of remade it into Departed, which was not bad. I still think the Hong Kong one was way better. And yeah, directed by Andrew Lowe, not Andy Lowe, but Andrew Lowe. So definitely check that out. Again, he's so versatile. Does a lot of period dramas like Hero, directed by Zhao Leimo. The photography now is unbelievable. Got 5 stars all around the world. We watch it. It's loosely based on a real incident in Chinese history, the assassination attempts for the first emperor. And this one I definitely recommend is watching Redcliffe, directed by John Woo. You've worked with John Woo a few times now. I mentioned this before in a previous video when I focused on John Woo films. So Redcliffe was a 2-part film. If you're going to watch it, watch it in 2 parts. Because there's a version out there where they cut 2 movies into one film, about 150 minutes long. Don't watch that. Watch the one that is part 1, part 2. You get the full story of the Redcliffe, the amazing set pieces, costumes, photography. It's amazing, and fans of the Three Kingdom period and Dynasty Warriors are going to love this. Okay, so definitely check that. Make sure it's 2 parts. Moving on to the collaboration between him and Wong Kar-wai. At first, with Wong Kar-wai, I need to do a video about him as well as another director. At first, maybe I was too young to appreciate art house movies, but I didn't like a lot of his films at first. Even Wong Kar-wai himself had to evolve because he did a lot of like standard Hong Kong film back in the late 80s. It's only like in the 90s onwards he kind of slowly established his style as an art house drama character-driven director. And the one that really got my attention with Wong Kar-wai was Chungking Express, Tony Leung, Fei Wong, Bridget Ling, and Takeshi Kaneshiro. It's like 2 separate stories into one. Brilliant film. I just loved the dialogues, the set pieces. I think the scene where he's moping around, he's love stricken, and he's talking to Orange. That scene was amazing, and he won that Best Actor for that. So the last 6 movies, check it out. The last movie, Lost Caution, was actually directed by Ang Lee. Again, he works with some of the best directors out there. But all of his films directed by Wong Kar-wai is good. Even the worst ones are good. I think my favorite one is Chungking Express, In the Mood for Love, Grandmaster. On the topic of Grandmaster is his character is based on Ip Man, who made famous around the world by Donnie Yen. It's a totally different kind of style. Donnie Yen is more focused on martial arts, so if you like action martial art, definitely check out the Donnie Yen ones. I'm talking about character focus, watch Grandmaster. There is martial arts in it, especially the bit when he's fighting in the ring. That was well done, very slick. The actor himself is not a real martial artist, even though he actually trained a lot. He actually broke his arm. Tony Leung actually broke his arm working on Grandmaster by training. So he wanted to play that role. Tony Leung is a very committed actor where he would focus on that role. He would train hard to do that. So definitely check Wong Kar-wai's movies. Last, Shang-Chi, the Legend of Ten Rings. So a lot of the younger audience or the new audience, you may not have heard of Tony Leung, probably first time exposure to him was watching Shang-Chi from Marvel Studios. I watched this film, what was it, last year? Was it last year? Last year, and I thought, okay. I remember reading some fans were saying, oh, this is going to be the Black Panther for Asian people. Yeah, I had my doubts because I've been burnt so many times, a Western company, a production team making a Chinese film or a film with Asian history, culture, and mythology. It never works out. The production team should have been surrounded by a lot more Chinese people, maybe even the director, producer, scriptwriter, cameraman. It's just surrounded by them, because I would say that you can get away with it if you do a modern film. For example, if you have an actor who just so happened to be a LAPD in the police force in modern days, he's investigating a murder or something, and the detective just so happens to be Chinese, for example. Yeah, no Chinese culture, none of that mythology, just straight up, cops and robbers. Yeah, fine. But when the film's based off like culture, legend, tradition, mythology on the Chinese culture itself, there's certain things that a Chinese person can pick up: the mannerisms, the body languages, just certain things that we pick up that only we can see. I don't know why it's so hard. I mean, it's like when I watched the Disney live action of Mulan, and that was terrible. It's the same thing. It's like we wouldn't do that, or they wouldn't do this in this time period, and so on. I feel like whenever there's some sort of mysticism in the Chinese film produced by a Western country, it's like they have to showcase, oh, we got dragons. Oh, look, we got martial arts. We got long dresses. We got these swords. I don't know. Just you've got these Chinese buildings. Yeah, you've got the waterfall. And you've got mystical powers. We've got honor. Just that you have to throw these keywords in just to say, oh, look, we covered the ground. All the boxes ticked. It just didn't feel natural. I mean, the ending with the dragon, I'm like, did you, as much as the dragon was CG done, it was nicely done, but I thought, was it necessary to have a dragon at the end? Things like that. I don't know, just certain things that, the parent and the son's relationship, it didn't feel Asian enough. It's more, the relationship is more Western based, and I didn't feel it was Asian enough, because the way we treat our fathers is so different that we treat our father relationship in the West. It's a totally different thing. Brothers and sisters relationships different than the West, and they kind of made it more Western based, I suppose, for the Western audience. But when I was watching it, I'm like, no, this is not how we talk to our parents, not how we act in something like that, especially from a more of a traditional family, things like that. I can go on, and I may do a video about, in my opinion, why it failed. I just hope that in the future, you don't have to have a Chinese director, but I hope the production team will be surrounded with more, Chinese producers. Maybe even actors have more freedom to say, this is not what we do, this is how it should be done, for example, things like that. But anyway, that is my 2 cents of Shang-Chi. I'd like to say thank you for staying to the end and watching this. And let me know. Are you a fan of Tony Leung from the past? If you are, what's your favorite movie? Anyway, until next time, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. And please stay safe. Have a great one. Goodbye.